What's going on, champs and champettes? It's FireMonkey here, and in today's YouTube video, I wanted to talk about the Fortnite ecosystem as a whole and my personal opinions on this trend that I've seen Epic Games kind of do time and time again, or at least my personal interpretation of it and my thoughts about how Epic Games is going about the future of Fortnite as a whole. So as you guys may recall, we've talked about this before, Tim Sweeney doesn't really like the fact that when people think of Fortnite, they mainly just think of Battle Royale, because he wants people to realize that there's more than just Battle Royale to that name of Fortnite, and that's why he's recently called it the platform currently known as, because maybe in the future he will rewrite, or I guess rename, what the actual launcher of the game is going to be called. So instead of launching Fortnite, maybe you're launching the Epic Ecosystem or EOS platform or something like that, and then stuff like Battle Royale will just be known as Fortnite Battle Royale inside of that additional launcher. And that kind of seems to be the main focus here for Tim Sweeney, is just getting Fortnite into this place where it's integrated into Unreal Engine, it's integrated into everything, and is more than just a game itself that people play and think of Battle Royale for. However, at the exact same time, I feel like there's been this trend with Epic Games, especially when it comes to their custom UEFN modes, you know, stuff like Ballistic, stuff like the Lego modes, etc., where they release the mode, you know, it does good at launch against a lot of players. For example, Ballistic is a great example, and then as time goes on, they kind of don't update it as much as they did at the start. You know, it's like as the player count continues to dwindle, the updates the mode gets are less and less. A great example of this, unironically, is going to have to be Del Mar, also known as Rocket Racing, because when that came out, they were really hyping it up. You know, they were like, Rocket Racing, this is the best. We have all these seasons planned. We even had the roadmap leak where they had a lot of maps planned, a lot of future content, and then because of it just kind of crashing and burning, you know, not really getting that many players at all, Epic Games just kind of scrapped the entire mode. Sure, it's still enabled, sure you can go play Rocket Racing right now if you want to, but at the exact same time, it hasn't really received an update in so long that for a while I just was unable to play it, because whenever I tried launching it, it would give me like this weird error, and apparently according to other people, the only way to fix it was to like uninstall the game entirely, reinstall it, delete all your UEFN files, do this, do that, go into each of them individual maps solo just to load it in, make sure that it lets you into those maps, and then go into like ranked Rocket Racing or whatever else. And it was a whole entire ordeal. It was a whole entire confusing situation for me, because it's like, how is this a mode that is still enabled that you can play right now that has been so forgotten by Epic Games due to the lack of players it actually gets, that I have to go through a million different steps just to play it, just to do like the ranked rewards or whatever. And then we start looking at some of the other modes in the game, like Ballistic. You know, Ballistic does still get some updates here and there. You know, they recently, I think, put all the full texturing on one of the maps you can have in Ballistic. And then we have stuff like Reload. You know, that has definitely gotten updates. You know, it's had, you know, a lot of content, but it seems whenever a mode does really good early on, they continue to update it. They continue to put tons of fresh stuff on it, you know, new coats of paint, all this type of stuff. And then as time goes on and those modes continue to lose a little bit more player count, and, you know, Battle Royale continues to be the main king of Fortnite, it feels like, at least to me, that they go ahead and kind of put that mode on the back burner. Sure, it gets updates, but it's not as frequent as when the mode first came out, and it ends up being in this odd situation where it's like, do they really even care about this mode? Because my canon mindset when it has come to anything Fortnite, especially in that ecosystem, is that it feels like whenever they go ahead and start releasing these modes, you know, they want it to be a must-succeed priority. They want it to actually do really well, so they release a lot of updates in certain areas, like, you know, Lego Fortnite, for example. I feel like there's more of like a contractual obligation to do it because it's in partnership with Lego, so Lego gets a little bit more of a say in that. But in terms of the Fortnite original modes, it feels like as the player count kind of dwindles and gets lower and lower, they move more of those devs back onto Battle Royale, back onto the popular modes, or onto some of the unreleased projects that we have already known about. Because for a while now, there's been like a million different codenames we've known for upcoming modes and game modes and all that type of stuff for Fortnite. There's stuff like Lego having a mode codenamed Rivalry, a Lego mode codenamed Diana. There's been a million like different Lego modes that they want to eventually release, and it makes me wonder with stuff like Lego Expeditions expeditions absolutely flopping down to like 80 players on a day at a peak. What is really going on? Is LEGO Rivalry still going to come out? Is LEGO Diana still going to come out? Is it going to be a situation where, like Expeditions, where it does really well at launch and then it kind of just like drops off a week or a month or a few months later, and then they just kind of consume that content into LEGO Fortnite Odyssey? It makes me really curious how Epic Games is thinking about this stuff, because when it came to Ballistic, for example, I haven't really heard that much news about it. I do know that, you know, the maps get textured here and there, and I think one of the maps recently got textured, but at the exact same time, that mode was originally created, according to some like presentation that happened before, to appease to the South Korean audience, as far as I can recall off the top of my head. And when it started to not do as well, you know, they stopped making new maps for it, and they stopped kind of focusing on putting new stuff in it. And the last update I can recall ever actually happening to Ballistic, other than maps getting textured, is a Star Wars pistol replacing one of the normal pistols, or I guess blaster rifle, replacing one of the normal pistols in Ballistic for the Star Wars mini season. But ever since then, I haven't really heard that much. And then of course we have Fortnite Festival. Now I'm gonna say this now, you know, I do think it's a little weird seeing some of the meme songs we get, like the spinning cat uya uya, or uia, you know, however you want to actually go about saying it. But at the same time, I'm not mad about those being in Fortnite Festival, because I like the little meme songs. It reminds me back when people would mod songs into like Rock Band or Guitar Hero or, you know, Clone Hero or Yarg, whatever else. So I'm fine with the meme songs, but I do think it's a little odd when we suddenly went from getting, you know, like 5 new songs a week, you know, tons and tons of new songs to actually get, to the whole entire FOMO of the item shop only having like 40 to 50 songs available every single week or every few days, and then also having us only getting like 1 to 2 jam tracks a week. It feels like they definitely slowed down over time, and then we've constantly heard news about them adding pro vocals to more and more songs. But when you look at the data for everything, you notice that there's still like 250 plus songs that don't even have pro vocals. For example, the Spinning Cat song that just recently released doesn't have pro vocals at all, and I'm wondering, are they trying to get every song with pro vocals before they okay, great, but before they officially release pro vocals to us? And if that's the case, why don't we have pro drums? Pro drums have been prepared, they've been finished for Fortnite Festival since like Sabrina Carpenter, since like I think Metallica, even back then they had like pro drums completed back then for all the songs. So what is taking them so long, and why can't they even talk about this? Because, you know, they wanted to bring all the pro instruments to the game, you know, they wanted to have pro vocals, or I guess, you know, plastic vocals, whatever you want to call it, in the game, and we're slowly seeing them add more and more vocal charting. But why is this something that they can't be transparent about? Because, you know, with us just seeing more and more FOMO come to the item shop, with us seeing them slowly update a lot of old songs that have pro vocals slowly over time without actually, you know, giving us an update on the mode itself and why they kind of slowed down on new jam tracks and all that stuff. I know licensing can be hard in order to get some music in the game, but at the same time, this is Fortnite we're talking about. Why is it such a vague thing where it's like we mainly find out news from leakers, right? You know, that is the main source of info, because it feels like Epic Games doesn't even want to tease upcoming content. Now, recently, I will admit they have been more vocal with the community, talking about why they're making certain changes, you know, especially with hotfixes, double XP weekends, all that type of stuff. But even though they've been more vocal there, in terms of the actual gameplay changes, I think the most vocal they've ever really been is just saying, we have a lot planned for the future. And it's like, cool, you know, you have a lot planned, and I understand there can be delays, especially with Epic Games. You know, there's always been a lot of delays internally with that company. I know there's been times, especially with like creative events or free rewards or whatever else, that they were supposed to release on certain days, and then like a day before they were supposed to release, they were like, oh, hey, we're actually delaying this by a week internally. So I know Epic Games is like the king of having delays internally, but at the same time, even if you have to delay something, I think it would be better for the generalized community if we, oh god, but I think it would be better for the generalized community if we at least had some form of an update, some form of communication from the company about why certain things are taking so long, about things they want to put in the game but they can't put in right now. And I know I'm kind of expecting too much here by saying that, because, you know, Epic Games is a big company, you know, they have to do certain things here and there, and they probably don't want to announce something just to never release it, because we've seen times like that before. I mean, a long time ago, Epic Games said when they added bots to Fortnite that they were going to have a player versus bots mode that you'd be able to queue into. And sure, we technically have a player versus bots mode if you're able to use like a phone or something to get into bot lobbies, but they were advertising it back then and talking about it back then like it was an official thing that they were going to be bringing in the future and looking into, so that we could have it just, you know, as a mode you can select into instead of having to do these weird tricks in order to get bot lobbies. But instead, we're in this weird situation where they just kind of don't talk about any of that stuff anymore. And, you know, if certain plans they had fell through, they decided last minute that it wasn't worth the experience or, you know, the time or effort or whatever else, I understand that. But I think it would have been better if you were vocal about that stuff early on and then decided to be vocal later on, being like, hey guys, so our plans actually changed, we're focusing on some other stuff here. You know, you don't have to say exactly one-to-one everything happening, but it would be nice to just know a little bit more instead of having to hope that leakers can find the new game modes in the files or the 3+ event playlist IDs or whatever else, because that stuff is something where it's like, you know, it gets out there eventually, right? You know, it still is out there, but it reminds me way back in the day when they actually removed patch notes as something they were doing. And I remember asking, I was like, hey, why did you guys remove patch notes or something? And I don't remember exactly who told me this, but I remember it was something where it was like a conversation between like me and Epic or someone at Epic or something a long time ago. And you know, they didn't tell me any like secret information. You know, I never asked for like insider info because I don't really do that type of stuff too much. But I was mainly just like, hey, because it was around the time some people were making like scripts to generate their own patch notes. And they were like, yeah, when we removed patch notes, we thought leakers would have just, you know, made their own form of patch notes sooner. So it seems like in some ways Epic Games intends for leakers, or at least, you know, back in like 2019, 2020, they intended for leakers to be a main part of how some of this information spreads in turn, instead of, you know, having them, you know, the company themselves be part of how the information gets publicly known as well. And I know this is kind of like a weird tangent, but I do think in general with the Epic Games ecosystem, there's this lack of communication where it feels like, as a player and someone who actually looks at the files way too much and sees too many things about this game, that Epic Games will try to release so many new modes. I feel like they're just trying to have every genre in the game so that they can say this is the everything game, you know, like how Elon wants Twitter to be the everything app, or like a banking app, a selfie app, I don't know, whatever else. It's like, I feel like that's what they kind of want to do with Fortnite, is make it the everything game where everything you want is in here. UEFN, oh, that's integrated to Unreal Engine 6, and you'll be able to play all those Unreal Engine experiences in Fortnite themselves, even though there's like a memory limitation on all of that, you know? It's like it still technically exists, and then it's like on top of that you have just the game modes themselves, where it feels like if Rocket Racing can still exist today without getting an update in like a year, you know, the only update, oh god, I need it, oh no. Oh, okay, good thing I had a checkpoint. But it's like if Rocket Racing can go multiple years without getting updates, then man, I'm just gonna say it, at this point, Epic Games, bring back imposters. They removed it a long time ago because they said they wanted to focus their efforts on other modes and other things they wanted to put in the game. But if you can keep Rocket Racing in here without actually updating it for so long, even though, you know, Imposters was honestly getting buggy as the updates came by, there was issues where there was like a 12th player and all that type of stuff, and I think there's only supposed to be like 10 or 11 members in a match or something. It's like, you know, just let it be buggy. You let Rocket Racing exist. You let Rocket Racing be buggy. Just bring back imposters at this point. You don't even have to update it. You can just let it rot there. I know there's UEFN recreations of it and everything, but if the focus was really on making sure that you only release quality modes, then I'm going to be honest here, Rocket Racing ain't it. Rocket Racing does not need to be in the ecosystem right now. I like it because it makes ranked quests a lot easier. You know, I can just do the early on races against bots and get a lot of the wheels and cosmetics for free without actually going into the normal ranked modes. But other than that, I don't think Rocket Racing really serves a purpose anymore. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about the Fortnite ecosystem? What do you think about where Epic is kind of headed to based on your own knowledge for Fortnite? And are you excited for the future, or are you a little bit iffy? You don't know how you actually feel about it. I feel like the main focus nowadays, of course, goes into the collaborations that actually release in the game, and I will say I'm so happy Save the World gives you so much V-Bucks as a founder, because it means I haven't really got to spend money. You know, these shoes, these kicks you're seeing on me, and this back bling, I grinded Save the World for that, and I ain't even mad about that, because, you know, it means I didn't have to spend any money to actually buy a pair of kicks in the game. But yeah, you know, I definitely think it's an odd, weird limbo for some of the modes in the game, but it's also like a really cool area for some other modes, because if your mode's popular, oh boy, you're going to be getting a million updates to your mode. You don't got to worry about a lack of content there. But if your mode isn't really that popular, then you're not really going to get any updates whatsoever. You're just going to be able to play the mode for now, unless Epic Games randomly decides in the future, actually, we don't want to have this mode anymore. Until next time, however, I'll catch you champs and champets a little bit later in another upload. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and until then, peace out.